Good morning. Those of you that wear trifocals will probably understand what I'm doing. I got to get it just right, or it hits in between. So I hope I can see. Well, what a great morning this is for me. I'm used to being sitting over there by the piano, listening to Father Andy proclaim the word of our Lord to us. But this morning, it's my opportunity to be here at the pulpit and do this. And it's our opening hymn said, it's only through God's amazing grace that I'm here and that I'm blessed to do this for us. So, not surprisingly, I've picked our gospel lesson to talk about this morning. There's a lot in there. I promise you, I'm not going to read all the way back down through it. In fact, I had a feeling while Andy was reading the gospel to us, it's always a blessing to the clergy to be able to proclaim the gospel of the Lord during the worship service. Just as it's a blessing to us to hear it, it comes back to us. I felt this morning, just maybe a double blessing. I felt the Spirit among us in this room, and perhaps this morning we more, I'd say, fully understand the very words that God purposed John to write down in his gospel. And thank you, Andy, for that long reading. During the season of Lent in year A, which we're in, we've been in the section of John's gospel where the purpose has been to clearly reveal who Jesus was, and at the same time to record the reactions of this self-revelation from the people around him. You remember last week the woman at the well, and it just follows that pattern at least through the first 12 verses or chapters, I believe it is, of John. And except for Palm Sunday, which is coming up in 2 weeks, today's gospel reading, consisting of the entire 9th chapter, I think is the longest in the lectionary. It's an account of not just one miracle, but 2 miracles. Interestingly enough, the first miracle is told in the first 7 verses out of a 41-verse reading. The rest of the chapter deals with the human reaction to the miracle. The healed man, his neighbors, his parents, and the Pharisees. The second miracle involved in this story is the insight the healed man was given, enabling him to confess Jesus as the Son of Man, the Messiah. The chapter begins and it ends with blindness. At the beginning, a man was physically blind, and at the end, the Pharisees were spiritually blind because of their sin. The healed man had a double miracle. He had both sight and insight. But let's take a look at the healing recorded just in these first 7 verses. And please allow me to paraphrase, because I promised I wouldn't read the whole thing back through to you. Jesus, sometime after his escape from an attended stoning by the Jewish authorities, was walking through Jerusalem, and he sees a man who is blind from birth. How Jesus knows he was blind from birth, we're not told. That Jesus knows that he was blind from birth is, of course, no surprise. But his disciples immediately want to know what happened to this man. Was it because of his own sin, or was it because of the sin of his parents? In response to his disciples, Jesus says that this man's blindness was not a consequence of any particular sin, either on his part or on his parents' part. Jesus said that this man was born blind so that the works of God may be displayed in him. Quite a statement. Before all eternity, God ordained that this man would be born blind, and his blindness and the taking away of it would be one of the means by which he revealed who his Son was and what he came into the world to do that was clothed in darkness. After saying this and reminding them of the urgency of these works being done as an outworking of his coming into the world to be light, Jesus does something very interesting. He spits in the dust, makes a paste of the mud, smears it on the man's eyes, and tells him to go to the pool of Siloam. Why does Jesus do this? Why not not just pronounce him healed as he did others. I would think perhaps he does this to deliberately invite comparisons between himself and his Father. He's already reminded the people of his close connection with the Father. He has already told them that he is the light of the world. And now he takes dust, just as his Father once did, and performs a creative act of his own. He creates sight where it didn't exist. He brings light to the darkness. Further, Jesus invited more scrutiny precisely because the healing was more than just a healing. It was a sign, something that carried special significance with regard to his identity. Jesus' identity is revealed by the very act of healing a blind man. For a sign of the Messianic age was the healing of blindness. Both physical blindness, as we see in Isaiah 35:5, then the eyes of the blind shall be opened, and the ears of the deaf unstopped, and spiritual blindness. For example, Isaiah 42:18. Hear, you deaf, and look, you blind, that you may see. Listen to the first 7 verses from Isaiah chapter 42. Behold my servant, whom I uphold, my chosen, and whom my soul delights. I have put my spirit upon him. He will bring forth justice to the nations. He will not cry aloud or lift his voice or make it heard in the street. A bruised reed he will not break, and a faintly burning wick he will not quench. He will faithfully bring forth justice. He will not grow faint or be discouraged till he has established justice in the earth, and the coastlands wait for his law. Thus says God, the Lord, who created the heavens and stretched them out, who spread out the earth and what comes from it, who gives breath to the people on it, and the spirit to those who walk in it. I am the Lord, I have called you to righteousness. I will take you by the hand and keep you. I will give you as a covenant for the people, a light for the nations, to open the eyes that are blind, to bring out prisoners from the dungeon, from the prison who sit in darkness. Healing the blind, delivering people from darkness to light was one of the distinctive things about Jesus' ministry. And this marked him out as the Messiah that God was going to send. Jesus tells this man to go and wash in the pool of Siloam. The text points out to us that this means sent, and even this detail was a sign. The one who sent him to the pool was one who God sent into the world to bring light into darkness. Let's consider some of the responses to the miracle that Jesus performed. The first responders were, of course, his neighbors, those who had seen him around, probably begging. Not surprisingly, their response was mixed. Some immediately recognized this man for who he was, and they were amazed. The others, who maybe didn't know him as well, they wouldn't accept it. They just wanted to say he was just a man that looked like the blind man, and they wouldn't admit what had actually happened to him. Isn't there a connection in the world today? Those who realize that this is the same blind man that they have seen on many occasions ask him how all this happened. So he describes the healing to them. In response to this, they take him to the Pharisees. But this was a natural thing for him to do. It wasn't a mean-hearted. Clearly, something of religious significance had happened among them, so they go consult with the local religious authorities. Much like I think we would do if we came against something we couldn't understand. The Pharisees, just like the man's neighbors, wanted to know how this he was made to see. So once again, he relates the story just as he had to the neighbors. The Pharisees, at least some of them, upon hearing that the healing took place on the Sabbath, said, "This man can't be from God, for no man from God would violate the Sabbath in this way." But some of the Pharisees apparently did believe he was God, or at least he might be from God. excuse me.